Welcome back to Pop Dissected. Today, we're going to be talking about JoJo's re-recorded albums, her self-titled debut, released in 2004, as well as her sophomore effort, The High Road, which released in 2006. We're going to go into detail about the issues she faced with her label, and how in 2018, she was able to reclaim her work against that label, Blackground Records. After the release of her first two albums, it would be 10 years until JoJo would be able to release a third, entitled Mad Love, in 2016. This album took so long to release after her label lost their distribution deal with Interscope Records in 2012. JoJo eventually revealed that after recording multiple incarnations of this album, she was finally able to get it released only after signing to a new label. So let's dive in and see what tactics, if any, were employed by Blackground Records to keep JoJo's first two efforts off streaming services. Similar to Taylor Swift's issues with her re-recordings, we're going to be exploring corporate greediness and how labels do their best to snatch a rising star and profit off of all their work. But before we begin, it would be greatly appreciated if you gave this video a like and considered subscribing so you can get more future content on all your favorite pop stars. JoJo released her debut album when she was just 13 years old. The pop R&B effort spawned the single Leave, Get Out, which reached number 1 on the Pop 100 chart, making JoJo the youngest artist to achieve this feat. The track additionally climbed up to 12 on the Hot 100 and number 1 on Canada's Pop Top 30 chart. Her first album debuted and peaked at number 4 on the Billboard 200, with 95,000 copies. Though well received and noted for her influences, critics were interested to see where JoJo would head next in her career. JoJo would go on to open up for Usher on his Truth Tour, and even embark on her own debut tour, in which she ventured across different malls throughout 2004. The High Road would climb even further on the charts in the United States and Canada, boasting a number 3 and number 12 position on the respective chart. The album also scored 108,000 copies in the United States. Development for The High Road began after JoJo was done filming Aquamarine, which finished in April of 2006. Having recorded over 30 songs for the album, JoJo stated how it would follow similarly to her debut, albeit with more rock influences. Though not as impactful internationally, the lead single off The High Road, Too Little Too Late, would go on to be her highest peaking single in the United States, reaching number 3 on the Hot 100. For a while, the track held the record for the largest jump into the top 3 spot on the Hot 100, moving 63 spots up the chart from 66. The High Road would receive generally more favorable reviews, with critics still citing numerous comparisons and JoJo's clear ability to cater to a specific market. However, following this album, this is where things begun to take a nosedive. In 2008, JoJo began work on her third album. By 2009, as discussed, Blackground Records was not cooperating in releasing the album, and JoJo sued them, not only after 20 of her songs leaked online, but to void her contract with them. Over the next few years, JoJo would put out a couple of mixtapes, as well as a handful of singles, none of which would chart or find any type of mainline commercial success. In 2013, JoJo again would sue Blackground Records for seemingly violating her contract that should have not extended beyond 7 years, as she signed it when she was a minor. Basically, Blackground Records kept JoJo hostage, unwilling to put out her third album. So with this, I want to try and get into some speculation on why exactly her label was unwilling to work with her. JoJo's fame began very young, being offered a record deal when she was just 6 years old, after making various appearances on several television shows, in which she exhibited her talents. Labels were interested in her then, so it's clear that JoJo was a hot commodity of sorts, as an up-and-coming star. So one has to ask, did these labels actually want to produce a long-running stable career, or make a quick buck? Knowing that Blackground kept JoJo tied to them, the latter could possibly be more accurate. The High Road showed less international success than her debut, and JoJo really only had 2 big hits under her belt. Though both her albums have sold 3 million units worldwide, perhaps her label didn't see her as lucrative as they thought. An idea is that her label may have just been hoarding her. She showed signs of initial success, but because it wasn't consistent, her label may have not wanted to drop her, have her signed to another label, and become even bigger than she was under them. This wouldn't be too far-fetched, as labels have strung artists long before, unsure of how to promote them, but not wanting to lose out on a huge opportunity. JoJo actually opened up about how her label pressured her to remain thin, in which she'd use an injectable that would require her to only consume around 500 calories a day to function. She would eventually return to a healthier weight, but felt if she didn't remain to the standards of her label, they wouldn't put out her third album. And they didn't. By this, we can assume JoJo was in a lose-lose situation, in which it didn't matter if she followed her label's guidelines or rules. They were going to keep her tied to them indefinitely, which is the whole reason she had to sue them. One thing we must note about JoJo is that by essentially being held hostage to her label, she was under a hiatus in a sense, since she had no major releases. With this, her career suffered irreversible damage when it came to engagement. Now, this isn't to speak on her talent, abilities, or her music herself, purely the commercial success. If Blackground hadn't jerked her around, she likely could have risen up to an even bigger stardom, and who knows what kind of career she would have today if that were the case. Now, before we continue, I'd love for you to become a channel member, in which you can receive special shoutouts in the description box and at the end of every video. You'll also get special badges, emojis, have the ability to decide all future video topics, and you'll be supporting me as a content creator. I hope to see you join. So, with the release of Mad Love, it was important to JoJo that her audience and fans were able to gain access to her previous efforts. However, they were nowhere to be found on streaming services. JoJo opened up, speaking on how Blackground didn't even have most of their artists' work on streaming services, likely due to them just not making an effort to make it happen. She continued on, speaking about how she wasn't even informed on this matter regarding her music, and how that no one at that label was in her corner the entire time she was there. The primary thing that encouraged JoJo to revisit her first two albums is her fans encouraging her to do something to make her first efforts accessible. JoJo, in addition to wanting to get these albums out to her fans, wanted to also maintain complete control of these efforts in every aspect, from creativity to publishing. Knowing there would be no way to reach out to Blackground Records, JoJo was informed she could re-record these albums in their entirety, which was truthfully her only option. It took JoJo only a handful of days to re-record both albums in their entirety and have them both mastered. She explained how in re-recording these songs, she was able to further connect to the material she wrote as a youth, now much older and wiser. JoJo wanted to keep the albums as true to their originals as possible, in order to maintain an aspect of nostalgia and remain faithful to what her fans love. In going back to her old work, she stated she felt a new sense of empowerment by reclaiming work that had been lost for so long, and being able to reconnect to that young girl she once was. She also said she may even take on this process with one of her mixtapes, as long as she can get in touch with the people she made the music with. JoJo would release these re-recordings through Clover Music, a subsidiary of Warner Music, formerly of Interscope. Additionally, under Clover, JoJo would release her fourth album, Good to Know, and her first holiday album, Christmas Baby. With her Good to Know tour being delayed over the past year, JoJo let her fans know that she was intent on rescheduling her tour for 2022, and additionally was going to put out a brand new album. JoJo's situation is not unique. We've seen time and time again where labels will trick, use, or ignore their artists but continue to profit off of them. With JoJo re-recording her albums, she's symbolically taking back her power. Every situation is different, so I don't think we can necessarily compare this to an artist like Taylor Swift and the situation with her masters. I think with JoJo's situation, we had a label that saw the potential of a young, gifted singer. They wanted to profit off her as soon as possible, then lock her up so no one else could use her. It's honestly a shame this entire situation had to occur in the first place. We've seen artists have their whole careers mismanaged. We've seen artist labels refuse to promote them or keep them trapped. I find it incredibly mind-boggling how one label or a group of people have the ability to make or break an artist in either the best or cruelest of ways. Despite all of this, it's a triumph that JoJo has been able to reclaim control of her career, despite all the odds seemingly being stacked against her. It's quite inspirational. So what do you think of JoJo? Are you a fan, and which of her albums are your favorite? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. As we finish, I'd like to thank Steven for rejoining as a channel member. I'd love to see others do the same. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Once more, it would be greatly appreciated if you dropped a like and considered subscribing so you can get more future content on all your favorite pop stars.